President Trump is celebrating 6 months since entering the White House for his second term, but he's also facing some growing backlash to a policy central to his reelection campaign. A new CNN poll finds that Americans largely oppose the Trump administration's efforts to ratchet up deportations, with 55% saying the president is going too far. That up 10 points, as you can see there, since February. CNN's Elena Treen is at the White House. Elena, I wonder if the administration sees any warning signs with these numbers. They're certainly not backing off the policy.
They're not, and I will tell you from my conversations, Jim, with people here at the White House and the broader Trump administration as well, they continue to argue that immigration specifically is a winning issue for them. I know whenever there's a specific case, just one example being the Albrego Garcia case, they argue that anytime, even when there's controversy over what they are doing, that it's good for them because they believe that immigration more broadly is well received, even though, as you pointed out, this new CNN polling and the numbers we're seeing, and I know this matches other polls as well, shows that Americans' appetite for these kinds of deportations is waning. And I think, it's important to remind you that this was the issue the president ran on in 2024, both publicly but also privately. He said that he believed immigration, and specifically his plans to widely and massively ramp up the deportation of illegal immigrants was the most important issue, even more of a priority than the economy. But just to get back to some of those numbers, you went over how 55% say that they believe the Trump administration has gone too far. But when you look at some of the specific policy, you look at the increase in the ICE budget by billions of dollars in the president's recent, as he refers to it, one big beautiful bill, only 31% of Americans say that they support that move, compared to 53% who oppose it. Another big, of course, policy priority for this administration is trying to end birthright citizenship, something the president tried to do during his first term, but was unsuccessful. Only 28% of Americans say that they support that, 59% oppose. So look, this is clearly continuing to be, we're looking at them trying to take these new billions of dollars and apply them to more deportations. Unclear, though, whether or not the majority of the American people are going to continue to, see their support for these moves continue to wane, or if they can somehow remessage some of this, Jim.
Listen, and then folks will have to decide whether it's answering to a poll or how they vote in the election, right, in the midterms when it comes
Exactly.
up. Elena Treen, thanks so much. Brianna.
For more on President Trump's first 6 months in office, we are joined, back in office, I should say. We're joined now by pollster and communications strategist Frank Luntz. All right, Frank, what are voters telling you 6 months in?
They're telling me that there are two Americas. And it's no longer a red America and a blue America. It's a Trump America or an anti-Trump America. Your viewers will react based on how they voted, because in the end, there is no similarity. There is no overlap. If you voted for Donald Trump, you like the immigration policy. You like the legislation. You want to cut spending in Washington. You want to have this greater focus on tax cuts or tax relief. And if you voted against him, you think this is the end of democracy as we know it. It really is that stark. And I don't see any commonality, any cross pressure that brings people together. So, Brianna, this is only the beginning. 6 months, we got 3.5 years to go, and America's continuing to separate, to divide, and the polarization is as great as it has ever been in the last 50 years.
You also said something here recently to The Atlantic. You did a really interesting interview with them where you said that voters of Trump's, they're happy with most of what he's doing. They're not happy with how he's doing it. And that has really become your refrain, Frank. What do you mean?
I mean that the language that he uses appeals to his vote, but his vote is not all of America. And he did get right at 50%. But a president should be trying to reach out to more than just 50%. Should be trying to unite the country. If you look at the issues in this legislation, you go issue by issue, and you put it plainly to the public, a lot of them have majority support. But the legislation overall doesn't, because in his communication, he's focused on his base. And he's doing a great job there. But that's not all of America. And I, as a pollster, have to see 100% of the country, not just the 49.9% who voted for him.
Yeah, and we look at CNN immigration polling here recently. 55% of Americans say the president has gone too far when it comes to deporting immigrants living in the U.S. illegally. That is actually up 10 points since February. If you break that out a little bit and look at it by party, it is two Americas, as you described. Just 15% of Republican aligned adults say that Trump has gone too far on deportations. What do you think of that?
I think that this is his goal. This is his objective, to reach out to the people who voted for him to say, you made the right choice. I kept my promises. I kept my word. And he's succeeding in that. But a president, and this is what he had done for the first 30, maybe 45 days, his numbers were higher than at any time in his career. And the reason why were the independents, the people who don't like either political party, who are studiously unaligned, and they saw what he was trying to do and they liked it. But over the last 3 months, it's been much more polarizing, much more overt, and some of the rhetoric has been really strong. And that turns off the people in the center. He is succeeding in reaching his people, but he is failing in unifying the country and bringing everyone on board. And Brianna, you get about 6 months. People give you a break. This is called the honeymoon period. Over the next 6 months, when Labor Day kicks in, then they're going to start to make decisions that will affect where they vote in 2026. A country is too important for pollsters. It's too important for people like me just to give you the breakdown of left and right and agree and disagree. What is essential is that we find some sort of common ground. So on issues that are so important, Medicaid, taxes, budgets, immigration, that we can have a consensus so we can move forward as a country rather than moving forward as a political party or an entity.
Yeah, you mentioned the honeymoon. Voters, when they decide to marry a candidate for president, ultimately it's Congress who they decide whether or not they're going to divorce. So we will see what happens in 2026. Frank, always great to talk with you. Frank Luntz, thank you so much.
Thank you.
President Trump is marking 6 months in office, saying that the United States is the hottest and most respected country in the world, and now that he is back in the White House. The 6-month mark comes just as new CNN polling shows that there is growing dissatisfaction on the central issue he campaigned on, immigration. In the latest survey, 55% say that the president has gone too far when it comes to deporting immigrants living in the United States illegally. That's up 10 points since February. Joining me right now, CNN political commentator Bakari Sellers and Republican strategist Doug Heye. Thanks for being here, guys. Doug, wins and losses in this first 6 months. How do you measure it, and what do you see here for President Trump?
Well, first, I start with the fact that Donald Trump's polling numbers on his personal approval are pretty static. You know, people have made up their minds a long time ago on what they think on Donald Trump. Republicans tend to really love him. Democrats tend to really not. So I start there. Then I look at what he's done legislatively. And presidents usually get their first big ticket item through. So the one big beautiful bill was probably always going to pass, despite the short margins that they have in both the House and the Senate. It just means he's had to work a lot harder at it. He's got wins that he can claim, especially wins that are important to his base. Good example, PBS and NPR is something conservatives were targeting for decades, and Trump can say, I'm the one who got it through. His challenge is he's not really been able to talk about it all that much because things like the Epstein memos and documents keep coming up and won't go away.
And also the reaction to the American public so far, Bakari, to those big wins, if you will, for the president. The CNN polling is that Americans largely oppose the administration's scaling up of the deportation program. CBS showed something similar, that most Americans think that they're deporting more people than they thought the administration would. And then on the big beautiful bill, 6 in 10 in the CBS poll disapprove of that legislation, which is why one can honestly wonder, why then is the CNN polling show that the Americans' view of the Democratic Party is so dismal, this lowest mark for Democrats in the history of CNN polling?
Yeah, I think that the election of Donald Trump has proven that Americans have very, very short memories. And what I mean by that is Americans are finally realizing what Donald Trump truly meant, what he's about. And those legislative achievements, look at the one big beautiful bill. which I hate grown men and women actually referring to it as such. But there were 11 million people kicked off Medicaid. That is a campaign promise broken. He promised to end all the wars around the world. Where the world is still on fire. Just last week, Israel fired missiles into Damascus. We're still seeing Ukraine and Russia rage on. We're still seeing and don't have a ceasefire yet with Israel and Iran. I mean, so those promises have been broken. And then you have an administration that's clouded by the Epstein files. And then you go back to that same old sheet of music that he's going to deport Rosie O'Donnell and that he's going to put Barack Obama in prison, although he is the president who got the Supreme Court to say that presidents are immune for their behavior while they're in the White House. And so it's just, there are two things that the American public like, and this is why Democrats and Republicans both are sucking right now. That is, they want competency and consistency. Donald Trump has proven to be incompetent and lack consistency, and Democrats don't have a competent or consistent message. And so right now, I think most Americans are like the hell with both parties.
Yeah, let's see.
Well, the White House touting its legislative wins as President Donald Trump marks 6 months in office. Many Americans, though, do seem much more interested in the Jeffrey Epstein files. The president is facing bipartisan calls for more transparency around the case. Well, CNN's Elena Treen back with us this hour. And there is no doubt that this 6-month milestone marks a moment for the White House to tout their successes. That laundry list of wins, somewhat overshadowed by this Epstein controversy. Just explain what's going on behind closed doors there at the White House and how they're managing this.
Yeah, look, I mean, despite the president's best efforts, Becky, of trying to kill this story, to convince his supporters specifically to move on from this, this is still dominating the public's attention. And you're right, there are a lot of different issues that the White House had been trying to highlight yesterday to mark his first 6 months in office. But this story, and particularly the Trump administration's handling of the Epstein case, continues really to have this grip on Americans who are still eager for so much information than what the administration is saying that they will provide. Now, of course, I would argue that the president, as well as his team, had really hoped that this Wall Street Journal story last week that had talked about an alleged letter that Trump had sent to Jeffrey Epstein back in the early 2000s would help put some of this to bed. One, of course, is that whereas a lot of Trump supporters are angry about their handling of the Epstein case, they also could be unified in when the White House tries to argue that a story is fake news. And we did see some of that, some of the president's fiercest supporters coalescing around him once again after that story. But the president also was hoping that his asking of the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to unseal the grand jury testimony from the Epstein case would also help with this. Now, one, I think people are calling it a good start. We heard both Republican Congressman Tim Burchett argue it was a good start. I had a conversation with Steve Bannon, a leader of the MAGA movement, who said it was a good start as well. But they're worried it would not be enough. And this is what we actually heard from one of the president's lawyers, Epstein's lawyers yesterday, Alan Dershowitz. He said in an interview on Fox News that the grand jury testimony was unlikely to contain the information that people are wanting. And now we're seeing not only Democrats, Republicans as well on Capitol Hill signing on and supporting this effort for a broader vote on unsealing these records. All to say, this isn't the way that they had been wanting to mark 6 months, and this isn't where they want the attention. And the president himself kind of recognized that over the weekend when he posted, he said, quote, "Nothing will be good enough for troublemakers and radical left lunatics making this request. It will always be more, more, more." He's saying that despite what he had said about the grand jury testimony and wanting to unseal that, it might not be enough for people. And we are seeing, I'd argue again, even if they do try to move and unseal this, it's up to a court to decide what actually will be publicized. And so this is a story now that has dominated media attention for roughly 2 weeks, over 2 weeks now, and it's not showing signs of going away. So unclear kind of where we go from here. But again, not exactly what they want to be talking about at this point in time, Becky.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Thank you for that.
I want to go to something else that galvanizes his base, and that would be the issue of immigration. In the latest CNN polling, 55% of those polled say Trump has gone too far when it comes to deporting migrants living in the U.S. illegally. That is up 10 points since February. This is mostly along party lines, we should note. And we just heard from my colleague Priscilla Alvarez about the influx of funding ICE and how that's going to supercharge deportations. So to Essie, to bring you back in on that, how do you think that is impacting the president and his standing right now?
You know, he came in with a lot of momentum. You remember he won the popular vote, the Electoral College, Dems had sort of imploded. And these two issues, the economy and immigration, were what got him a second term. And honestly, from where I sit, he's sort of bungled both. A majority of Americans want a solution to illegal immigration. They don't like sanctuary cities. They don't like amnesty. But this isn't the solution they wanted. So he's kind of fumbled that momentum in really even disappointing some of his own base on how far he's gone. And same the economy. You know, he promised 200 tariff deals by now. We've got 4. He hasn't really done anything to lower food prices. They're actually up 3% from this time last year. So these top 2 issues that gave him all the momentum, where a lot of people were with him, he's really, I think, kind of squandered for these other sort of loud noises and flashes that have been more distracting.
What do you think about that, Brian?
Yeah, listen, I think on immigration, he's hit exactly where he's wanted to hit. You know, right now you're seeing a little bit of distaste from the electorate of what took place in Los Angeles. I suspect those heavy raids. But at the end of the day, the base is very happy with the progress he's making with respect to illegal immigration and illegal aliens. The fact that he's storing or they're jailing these illegal aliens and not just releasing them back in the streets, that is very popular with the base. That's something that didn't happen in the first term to the tens of millions of folks who were able to enter this country, through the bypassing our normal process. And so I think as long as he continues to hit that mark and make sure that he's picking up the criminals, picking up these folks, keeping them here before we send them back, I think that's going to be positive. As opposed,
just to really quickly follow up on you, because several people that have been deported don't have a criminal record.
Yep.
So do you think that in some ways the administration is going too far?
Well, listen, I think it's important to realize if you're an illegal alien in the United States seeking a job, that is a felony. That in itself is a crime. So when they're finding these people at Walmart, where they're finding these people at Home Depot, those guys are in the process of committing a crime. So that is actually a physical crime, whereas opposed it's not a crime to enter, or it's an infraction to enter the country illegally. But going back to to the energy cost, or not the energy cost, the economy, I hear people say, from a year ago, inflation is up, or it's not that down, or a year ago prices. Donald Trump has been in office for 6 months, right? And so if you look at where gas prices have been since when he took office to now, gas prices are remarkably lower. This is the lowest gas prices have been this summer in years. If you look at the price of eggs from when Trump took office to today, the price of eggs is actually down. Sure, you can blame Trump for the last 6 months of Joe Biden, where the economy really went to hell, but the American people aren't blaming Trump for the last 6 months of Joe Biden. They're going to hold him accountable for the first 6 months. And if you look at the first 6 months, inflation is actually down from when he took office to where it is today. So when you look at the key factors that matter to the American people, he's hitting those benchmarks. But when you have this conversation on media, whether it's Essie or other folks, they're trying to say year in, year out, Donald Trump is not responsible for the last 6 years of Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Joe Biden is responsible, and that's why he's not in office.
Let me just follow up, because you said it was a felony.
Misdemeanor felony.
Being president in the United States without authorization is a civil violation,
Yep.
not a criminal offense. I just want to.
But seeking a job in the United States and being employed, that itself is a crime. Being in the United States, breaking our immigration laws, that's an infraction. That's a civil infraction.
Right. That's
but
what I want to be
seeking
clear,
a job,
just with our clear with our viewers.
for the viewers, seeking a job is a crime if you're an illegal
just to follow
alien.
up with you though quickly on the food prices, because Essie talked a lot about that and how that was on top of people's minds when they voted.
Yep.
You are seeing some food prices go up, like beef prices, for example. Egg prices have gone down. Beef prices are harder to come down. I mean, as someone who wants to see Trump succeed, is on the Republican team, does that concern you?
Yeah, listen, you're going to be concerned the entire 4 years because you don't know what's going to happen with the market. You don't know whether it's going to be beef prices today, chicken prices next year, or even pork. So you're always concerned about these things, but what you want is want to show a president that's responsive to what's taking place. So at the beginning of the year, you had inflation that was, I think at the end of Biden, it ended at 3.1. Today, it's at 2.5, so it's gone down. Egg prices have gone down, gas prices. What you want is a president that's responsive to what the market is saying, but ultimately make things affordable. And over time, since he's been in office in the past 6 months, he has wholeheartedly made things more affordable.
All right, so we just lost SE Signal. Brian Lanza, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
All right, joining me now is Democratic Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan of Virginia to talk about this and more. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So we've been talking about the latest CNN polling. 55% of those polled say the president has gone too far when it comes to deporting migrants living in the United States illegally, which is up 10 points since February. But I should also mention, when you break it down between Democrat and Republican, they couldn't be further apart. 90% of Democratic-aligned adults polled say it's gone too far, while just 15% of Republican-aligned adults say the same. So I guess the question is, do those results surprise you? And how do you anticipate the issue of deportation, immigration, playing into the midterms next year?
They don't surprise me, because what I have seen in my own district, in Virginia in particular, early on is a dissatisfaction with the way, and frankly outrage with the way the Trump administration is doing these mass deportations. In my own district in Chesterfield County, ICE is showing up at the courthouse, detaining people who are showing up for traffic infractions or who have traffic infractions and are showing up for immigration cases. And it's really affecting public safety. We are seeing our prosecutors, our police chief, our sheriff are all saying this is making people less safe because fewer people are reporting crimes, fewer people are willing to testify or press charges, even citizens who are immigrants, because they are afraid of what may happen if they show up at the courthouse.
So you've noticed a change, I guess, in daily life in your district?
I have. I mean, we have a lot of people, a lot of immigrants in a vibrant immigrant community, including citizens, who are afraid to show up in public spaces, in the courthouse. It is making our communities less safe. We have parents who are afraid to send their kids to school, who are afraid to show up in hospitals, who are afraid to go to church, because they just don't know what's going to happen.
And, you know, obviously the big test for this comes when voters have the chance to go to the ballot box in the midterms next year. And I want to get your take, because looking ahead to that, some of the CNN polling we've done showed 72% of Democrats and Democratic-aligned registered voters say they're extremely motivated to vote in next year's election, which is much higher than Republicans. But at the same time, just 58% of Democrats and Democratic-aligned voters had a favorable view of the party. And so how do you bridge the gap between the enthusiasm but with also favorability of people they actually want to put in office?
You know, I think the Democratic Party, we have a lot of work to do, make sure we are meeting voters where they are, listening to what they have to say, and talking to them about the issues that they want us to take action on. And we know that there are a lot of people who think we need to fight harder against the Trump administration. And I think the challenge for us is making sure we are communicating what we are doing in every way that people receive information. But what's going to matter is what we're doing on the ground in these districts. And when we show up in these districts, meet voters where they are, talking about our vision for the future and what we're going to do to stop the excesses of the Trump administration, you know, we're going to win. We've seen that in special elections since the Trump administration. And in Virginia, we've got an election right now. Yep. It's going to be a canary in the coal mine, and we are doing everything we need to do to turn that enthusiasm out, get those voters out to vote in the November election.